Gramsci, the person, and Gramsci is the name.
Okay, so thank you.
So are we starting?
Yeah, we're starting.
Perfect.
So can you present yourself briefly and explain why you're here in Glasgow?
I'm Lobsang Yangcho. I was born in Tibet, and when I was 10, I escaped to India while crossing Himalayas for more than 25 years. And so right now I am in exile in India, and I worked as an environmental researcher for International Tibet Network. And I came here at the COP26 because the Tibetans do not have any representation at the COP26. So Tibet is very important in terms of its environment to the neighboring country, to the world as well. But one, we don't have any representation. Two, nobody speaks about Tibet. So thus, we came here and we don't have any space. So I just, whenever there are some spaces, I just hijack and then try to discuss about Tibet. Yeah.
So you're going in the blue zone, you said? So what are you going to talk about?
So I have an observer, the accreditation in the blue zone, and so there is this COP26 TV. So they are, I think, going to interview me over there. Yeah.
And how are the people in your country impacted by the climate change, and what is the government doing about it?
Tibet, as we say, is a third pole, whereas Tibet has the third largest ice mass outside the north and the south pole. But Tibet is warming 2 to 4 times faster than the rest of the world. Thus, Tibetan glaciers are melting, permafrost are degrading, grasslands are degrading. But the causes of this climate crisis is one, the climate change, and the second, the Chinese governments and policies and their development policies are the causes of the climate change and climate crisis in Tibet. If I say one example, 70% of the Tibet's landscape is a ranch land, it's a pastoralist, and Tibetans are a large number of, more than half of the Tibetan populations are nomads, because that landscape is more, Tibetan landscape is more suitable for the nomadic lifestyle than the farming. Though we have farmers, my family is a farmer, but recently Chinese government has adopted a policy saying that we would relocate the nomads from their grassland. One, because nomads overgrazing is the causes of grassland degradation. Two, nomads are having economically backward, so the state wants to improve their economic condition. Thus, we want to remove the nomads. So over there, the land gets ownership by the state, and then they use that land for mining, nature reserve in the name of nature conservation or national parks. But people lose livelihood. For thousands of years, Tibetan nomads has been nomad, but once they are removed and then made to settle in a concentrated area without any employment opportunities, without any employment skills, they lose their traditional lifestyle, they are losing their identity, the culture, and many of the younger Tibetans remain unemployed. But this Chinese government's policy of nomads relocation has never been proved by the scientific, saying that this has helped the grassland protection or the conservation. So this is one clear example that the Chinese government is the causes of climate crisis in Tibet. Secondly, Tibet has a huge water resources. It is known as the third water tower of Asia. The 10 major rivers are flowing from Tibet to 11 Asian countries. However, because of the climate change, glacier melting, so it is having an impact on downstream nations. Moreover, China is building dams on the upstream of the river. Secondly, China has not signed any water treaty or a water agreement with any of its neighboring countries. So when they build dams, they remove the Tibetan local communities or the farmers from that place, and they get displaced. And first they say that we will provide you compensation, you remove. And people say, we have been living here for so long, this is our land, we don't want to move to other places. Then they forcefully make you to remove and move from, so displacement. And so I think it's the kind of infrastructure development. And then most important, Tibetans are never included in the policy making. It's the Chinese government who decide what is good for the Tibetans and how to. So Tibetans' traditional knowledge and their practices of environment protection has never been respected, recognized by the Chinese government.
And the mobilization of the citizens, or there is some actions taken by the Tibetans?
Definitely. The majority of almost 99% of Tibetans are Buddhist. So our life are very much influenced by the religious traditions and religious beliefs, right? We have a parent religion and Buddhism, and that has really influenced us in protecting. One, because we believe in sacred mountains and sacred rivers and lakes, and so because of that concept, people say that so this is sacred because we believe in deities and demons, and we believe that sacred mountains and sacred lakes are the dwelling places for the deities. And if we mine and if we destroy the lands, so that will hurt the and anger the deities and demons. So these are the beliefs that people don't pollute the lakes. People don't do any. I would say not like, but they don't do massive mining on the big mountains and sacred mountains. That is one way where Tibetans are protecting the environment. Second, nowadays many Tibetan monastery religious leaders, lay persons, and especially monks and nuns, so they are taking lots of initiative in terms of waste management and planting trees, reforestation, and moreover, but the interesting part is, as long as you carry environment protection work in Tibet and that does not harm the interest of the state, the Chinese government, or that does not harm the interest of the big company, you are okay. But if you raise voices against the mining, if you raise voices against the damming, you get imprisoned. One case is that Anya Senda and Kama Samtu. Kama Samtu and Anya Senda are two individuals, Tibetan people. They have been working and they have been promoting environment conservation. And so when they raise voices against the Chinese government's corruption and mining and damming, they get imprisoned. And Kama Samtu has got 15 years of imprisonment. That is the situation over there. So, but still, I think that is one way. And then I feel that Tibetans inside Tibet, they are very courageous. They sacrifice their life, and sometimes, through music, through art, they convey message, and in terms of protecting the environment, in terms of protecting your language, and how important Tibetan land is, and the beauty, the beautiful landscapes. So through music, through art, through painting, Tibetans are, I think Tibetans are preserving the environment.
And if you had the power to implement a specific or like two main policies in Tibet, what would they be for you? What's more urgent thing to do?
Well, definitely. I mean, we faced climate crisis in Tibet, right? But it is not only about the environment issue. It's also about the political problem. Right, and unless and until Tibet is not independent, or unless and until Tibetans do not have a freedom, because we are under colonialism, we are under occupation, right? So the Chinese are exploiting our natural resources. Chinese are exploiting our water resources. So no matter what, unless and until our political problem is not solved, we will never be protected. Tibetan people are never important for the Chinese. It is the rich land, the water resources, the natural resources. So unless and until you don't have a political solution of the Tibet problem or the Tibet cause, there won't be any scope for the Tibetans to participate. But suppose if I have a power, as we have a previous speaker in our previous conference, she said that the people who are unrepresented should have an observer seat at the UN Security Council, SC, right? But China is also in the UN Security Council. They would never allow Tibetans to be even as an observer in the Security Council. But I really believe that UNFCCC, when they say the environment protection and inclusivity and then transparency, I really urge the UNFCCC to give our Tibetans in a voice at the COP26, like the other nations. They are most affected place. Tibetans and also the West Saharan people, they should get a space and let speak about what is happening. And you can't just silence the people, right? It's a colonialism and it's an occupation, and unless until the world leaders, they really, if they don't take a serious problem, because if we continue to face a glacier melting and permafrost melting, it's not the Tibetans only that will get infected. It would be 1.4 billion Asian populations would be affected by the climate crisis in Tibet. However, I said earlier in the discussions with the neighboring countries, they are silent. They're saying, oh, China is so powerful, it's complicated. But common people are the ones who are most affected by the climate change. What about your people? I'm not saying that you speak on behalf of me, but what about your people who live, whose livelihood is dependent on the water that is flow from Tibet? Will you be able to remain silent? No, I mean you can't, right? So that's it. So there is so much to do in that.
And about the international community, what are you expecting apart from this inclusion? Like, what would you like them to do? It's not hearing anymore China requesting some main things that are urgent in your case, but as you said, it's also about people, Asian people in general, not just Tibetans. So, what are you going to say to them when you're going to meet those?
I think with the international community, there are a few things that they can do. One, independent researchers are not allowed inside Tibet to do a research what is actually happening at the ground level. So I think the international community should pressure China, saying that independent researchers should allow inside Tibet and then allow to do a research and see what is actually happening inside Tibet. So transparent, and also China does not hardly shares any data with scientific data with any of the academics or the international communities. So they should be accountable in that. And secondly, I think whenever we talk about climate change or climate discussions, as I said earlier, Tibet is never be included. They never mention because I think when we look at China, 23% of the Chinese land is Tibet. Tibet has 2.5 million square kilometers. 23% of China's land is Tibet. But Tibet has only 1% of China's population. We have a huge land with a very small population. But the international community has to do that. And one, in terms of transparency and data sharing, and then including Tibetans in the climate discussion. And thirdly, I feel that the international community should recognize the significance of the Tibetan Plateau. As we are the ones who always says that Tibet is important not only for us but for the Asian community. But I think because of the politics, they remain silent and they are aware of the whole situation. Some academics, I have lived in India and I have known that, right? Some professors, some researchers, they say that, oh, I can't talk about Tibet because I want to go to China and do a research. They would sacrifice in that. But I think even the academicians and the politicians, they should have some morality as a person, right? We are a human being, right? You can't just always go for your interest. You should, unless and until the politicians or the academics or the scientists, they don't have a morality, it will never benefit the people. It will never solve the problem.
Can I ask you a last question?
Sure.
Because I don't want to take
No.
in this kind of bad context, what is a source of inspiration for you? What gives you hope? You talked about activists who are ready to sacrifice themselves for the cause. So do you have some points to some figures or to share with us, some person that inspire you, some actions? And as a last message, what would you like us to share in our country, in young people?
Well, I always feel that my inspiration is my mother. So when my father passed away when I was 3 years old. I was born in Tibet, right? So my whole family, and so we have a total of 5 siblings, and my mother was very young. So when I was 10 years old, so she was very young that time. She must have been in the early 40s, but she had 10 children to look after. But then she decided to send me and my brother by crossing the Himalayas without having any travel document to India, hoping that we get a better education and a better life. And so while we were crossing, we were arrested, we were released, then again we escaped. So finally I was here, and then I was sent in a Tibetan school, and my brother is a monk right now. He was sent in a monastery, and then my mother went back. And so when I was in 5th standard, my mother passed away, and I couldn't see her. But then when I am of her kind of age, so when I think I would never be able to send my kids far away places and not knowing when will you meet your children again, and that really happened in my life. And so sometimes I get distracted, sometimes I get frustrated, sometimes I lose hope. It really happens, and then I try to remind myself the initial journey that I had. So that is one inspiration. I feel that keeps me going. Everything is not perfect. Even Tibetans are not perfect. The world is not perfect. But I think I try to remind myself that story. The second is the sacrifice the Tibetans inside Tibet. Because in 2016, after 25 years, I got a chance to visit my family. And I saw the kind of restrictions and control and surveillance that the Chinese are doing inside Tibet. Though I have read, but then I have seen myself, there is no freedom. And when I returned back from Tibet, when I landed in Nepal, then I felt so relaxed. And I felt that at that time, I understood the meaning, what is the value of the freedom during that time. So, however, the Tibetans inside Tibet, they sacrifice their lives. You might have also heard about how more than 150 Tibetans have self-immolated themselves, meaning they have burned themselves for the rights for the freedom of the Tibetan people. So they are another huge inspiration in my life. And even though the life of Tibetans outside Tibet is not perfect, I am still a refugee. In India, I don't enjoy some rights, and we have Tibetans all over the world. They are also struggling, but I think the kind of dedication and sacrifice that the Tibetans who do inside Tibet is the main sources, inspiration for many of us. And your last question, I mean, what can the young people can do? First, I think it's very important to have knowledge and understanding of the whole issue. I'm not saying that you just listen to my story, right? I'm saying that you listen to my story and you listen to what the Chinese are saying, and then you decide, right? I mean, you have to be objective. I'm not saying that I'm right and they are wrong. I mean, you have to hear both the story. You can't just go on one. Two, I mean, since you have your own country and you have your own citizenship, you should try to go and visit Tibet and see yourself. And then you will realize and what it mean. But even though if you go as a tourist, you will have a lot of restrictions. You can't go independently. You have to travel with a travel agent, and travel agent will decide what to see and what not to see. But still, I think this could be also another way of seeing the reality. And then, I mean, first I'm going to try to understand the whole issue, and then also you have your government in the UN, you have your government at the hub. So if you can please talk to your governments, your MPs, your representatives, and say this is the real situation, and if you really care about human rights, if you really care about democracy, climate crisis, here is one country which is the front line of the global climate crisis, and they don't have a representation. So it's I think moral right for you to discuss about that if you could do that. So that would I think really help us, and we would really appreciate that.